The next bit I want to look at, and it's one of the major parts here, is this element of our navigation bar. We can see our navigation bar doesn't look like a navigation bar. It definitely doesn't look like buttons. So let's do a bit of styling to this and make it look so it's a button. Now we've applied a lot of styles in already, and it's quite easy to see that what we're doing, but we're going to apply quite a number of different styles just solely to our navigation. And what I tend to find is an easy way of managing my code and my markup is putting little dividers in somewhere, or some sort of line to make it easy for me to go, oh, that's dealing with specifically with the navigation bar, and this is dealing specifically with the images or whatever you want to use it for. And within cascading style sheets, like with HTML, we can apply comments, and the comments tags within CSS are different to those that you'll find in HTML. And the way that we do that is we do a / and then a star. That denotes to the browser, anything rendering our HTML page, that this is now a comment within the style sheets. So I can put hello here, and it wouldn't affect the rendering of that web page. But at this point it would, so it sounds a bit of a contradiction of terms there, but it would, because I've not added the close tag. And the way that we do the close tag is do a star / So that is a completed comment inside of cascading style sheets. Now I'm going to do this as an option for me to separate my code, so that I know that this is other stuff and everything below here is going to be dealing with and playing around with our navigation bar. So let's put some comments in here. Just say nav bar styles, and it's a good little point there. And then I could do another comment down here / star nav bar styles / /. If you wanted to be really efficient, you could say end, and you could do start there. So I now know that everything in between here solely relates to our navigation bar. So let's look at our navigation bar, how we're going to apply some styles here. Now we are going to use a mixture of classes and IDs. So as I mentioned earlier on, if we're going to target a class inside of CSS, we're going to use a full stop, and if we're going to target an ID, we're going to use a hashtag. So the first one that we want to look at is the dots, the class, and I'm going to type in dots, and I'm going to type in navbar. And this will allow us to do a few things. We're going to look at how we can apply the color to the navbar itself, whether it's visible or not. And this is going to be very important because we're trying to make our navbar responsive. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, we can use the viewport element within the HTML to capture what size window the users are using, and then remove or apply different rules based upon the size of the window. So if they've got a very big window, then we can just display the navigation bar as normal. But if they've got a really small window, maybe a mobile phone, or could even be a tablet, then we might want to think about how we're presenting the navigation bar, because it might be too large and it might mean that they've got to scroll to the left and right. So that's when we could apply different styles and rules and have what's known as a hamburger menu. And a hamburger menu will look a little bit like 3 bars. You click on it and then it expands, and then we can have a number of options underneath. So we're going to start off inside of our nav bar here, and we're going to apply the rule of overflow, and we're going to give it a value of hidden. So this is just going to hide anything that overflows inside of our nav bar. And I want to give it a background color, and I want to give it a background color of hashtag EEE. Now earlier on I mentioned about the 6 value and the 3 value. The easiest way to present your colours is having the definitive code. Now if you find that you are repeating a letter, so as you see up here where I'm highlighting at the moment, all of these, we could represent it as this here. But if I was to do a different shade and put EF, 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 I can't represent that in a 3-lettered symbol or a 3-lettered way. I'd have to do it as a 6 code number. So I'm just going to return that to what we liked before. But you can have a mixture of the two. There won't be any problems, there won't be any issues with that. So I'm happy with that at the moment, and then I'm going to save that and just see what happens if anything happens. Okay, it's made a grey area inside of our wrap-up. Not a problem. You will find things look like they're broken, but hopefully, if you're following along properly, things will sort themselves out very, very quickly. So we're going to go back to our style sheets, and we're going to go in and we're going to go underneath the navbar close tag, and I'm going to type in .navbar. Oops. And this time I'm going to do a space, and then I'm going to look for an A, and then I'm going to do a colon, and then I'm going to type in hover. So what's happening in this instance here is that we're targeting the class navbar, and then we're looking inside the navbar for anything with an A or an anchored hyperlink. So if we look at the hashtag down here, or the actual navbar here, you can see there's the class, the dot navbar. So that one there corresponds to that one there. And then we're looking for any anchored hyperlinks, they're the A's, inside of that tag. But also this little colon here means that if there's an action going on, so when I hover over an element within inside of here, I want to apply some new rules so people would know that they've hovered over it. So if you moved your mouse over the example, you can see that there's a change in colour. So it knows, you know that instinctively that is a button. If you click on it, it's going to do something. So we're going to apply some styles to achieve that. So we're going to go down there, we're going to open our bracket, and we're going to apply colour of black. Now you're probably thinking, colour, that's spelt wrong. Well actually, when we deal with HTML and CSS, we use the American format for spelling. And this colour doesn't mean the colour of the object, it's talking about the colour of the text. We don't put text colour, we just type in colour. So I'm going to apply the rule of black. And I'm going to apply another rule. I want to give a background colour. So when I hover over, as you can see from the example again, when I hover over, I want to make sure the text stays black, but I want to make the background of that A area go a different colour. So if we go back to our code, I'm going to type in background colour. Background hyphen colour. And it's an offish grey that I'm using there. So I'm going to apply a rule of hashtag BBB. I think that's a light grey or a dark grey. And then finish there. And close that bracket. So let's save that, see what happens. Something might happen within our web page, it might not. So let's click on it, click on refresh. Oh look, there you go. So we can see when we move our cursor over, it changes colour ever so slightly. Now that we've dealt with the navigation bar element and the part where it hovers over and changes colour, we're going to be looking at how we can make the buttons look like a button. And this is where the fun's going to begin, because we're going to move from having just a standard piece of text for our anchored hyperlink that's blue with underlines. and turning them into the buttons that we want them to look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into our CSS rule inside of our navbar style start and navbar styles end, and we're going to now focus on the anchored hyperlink element with the inside of our navigation bar. And to do that, what we need to do is we need to target the navigation bar. So we do dot nav bar, and this time around, rather than doing A with a colon, which is going to target the A itself, so all of the anchored hyperlinks that appear inside of our navigation bar, so even if that's the active one or the non-active one, we're going to target all of them, and we're going to apply some styles to them. So the first thing we want to do is we want to use what's known as a float. And float is going to allow us to move things to the left and to the right and within our container of the navbar. So we type in float, and we're going to float them to the left. So what this is essentially going to do is make sure that everything sticks to the left hand side of the container of the navbar. We're then going to make sure that they are displayed as a block. Display as a block. This means rather than just text area being the highlighted area, we're going to make it the whole area being highlighted and being an object or a button. We want to give the color of the text inside the navigation or inside of the anchored hyperlink to be black. We target that with color, and then we can type in the name black, or if you wanted to use hexadecimal you can do. And then we're going to give our buttons some text alignment, so we're going to target all of the text inside of the anchored hyperlinks, and we want to align them using text align, and we want to make sure that the buttons appear in the center, or we want to make sure the actual content or the text inside the button is aligned in the center. And we add in the text align element center to do so. Then we want to provide a spacing or a bit of padding around the actual container once it's done. So if we add some padding, and I'm going to do something here that we've not done before and add two values. The reason we do that is because the first value will target things on the top and the bottom, and the second value will target things on the left and the right. So we're going to add 14 pixels and 16 pixels. It's important that we add a space between those two values there, otherwise it might confuse our CSS and it will not work. After our padding, we're going to be looking at adding something to remove all of the underline around our anchored hyperlink and the blue style text, and we use a thing called decoration or text decoration, and the decoration is the stuff that we don't need, so the underline and the blue colour to show that it's a hyperlink. So we'll go on to a new line after our padding, and we're going to select text hyphen decoration, and we're going to set that to none, and that's just going to strip out any decoration or any styling that's attached to that element and make it just text. And the last little piece of information we want to do is we want to make sure it doesn't look like a list, so we do list hyphen style type, set that to none too, and then we're going to close that bracket there. I'm going to go up and save this, and as we've done before, go over to our preview and just refresh and see what happens. And we can now see that actually we're starting to get our navigation look like some form of navigation buttons. There is still some more work that we need to do, but we are getting there. So let's move back to our styles for our navigation, and we're going to target a specific area this time around. And we want to give our active button a background of white for their colour
and then change very slightly the colour of the background of the button to be of a darker grey, so we can tell when we are on that page or in our website that someone can look up at the navigation bar and they can see quite easily, because there's a difference between the buttons, that they are on home, for instance, and that's because the home button is almost highlighted in a different colour. So let's do that by targeting the navbar as our container, and we want to target the A again that's got the value of active. Okay, so let's just put some brackets in here and look and reflect at what we've actually got here. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm just going to look at our navbar here, and you can see inside the navbar, inside the A, there's a class that's active. So that's going to target anything here that's active, such as a home. So as we go through and we make our website of multiple pages, each one of those pages will have a different button inside our navbar as being active. So if we were on the Unit 1 page, for example, that could be that this is this page here, and we'd want to move that class element down just to here to make this page here the active button, make it highlighted on the menu. So let's move up into our rule for the navbar, and let's make sure that we add some rules. And let's make sure we add some rules. So we want to make sure that the background colour is slightly different to something else that we've already got. So let's just start typing in background, choose the background colour, and then we're going to give it a value. And I'm going to give it a value of hashtag A. And I think I'm going to give the colour of the text, as I said earlier on, to make it white, so it gives a bit of contrast between the background colour. So let's add COLOR white. And then let's save that and see what that looks like over here. So now we can see quite nicely that we've got a background there that's like a grey with a text over, and it gives us an instant recognisable element to say, yes, this is the home page. The next step that we need to take is adding some information that we'll be using later on, so we might as well put it in there now. So underneath our active navbar element, we're going to put in another piece of information, another rule, and we're going to target the navbar, and we're going to target the icon inside. And we're going to set the display to none. What this is going to be used for later on is when we use our responsivity to make our navigation bar appear and then disappear when we've got our Hamburger menu. This is part of the code that's going to allow us to make sure that that happens. So now let's refresh and make sure that everything is looking okay on our web page, and we can say that we're quite happy with that so far. Let's move on to the next section, which is we're going to apply some styles to our table.